this is, I think, our ninth Music Cities Together Live program, and we have been very mindful of the fact that for a show that is supposed to be about music, we've been featuring musicians, of course, and discussions around music. We haven't actually played any music yet. And we're going to try to rectify that by sharing with you what many of us feel is one of the most compelling, if not the most compelling, pieces of new art and music that has been released during the crisis. And thankfully, it is the product of our first guest, the spectacular Thao Nguyen of Thao and the Get Down, Stay Down. So to set the stage and open up the conversation, we're going to have a very laggy 2.5-minute presentation of Thao's new music video, Phenom.
Sip on joy, the purest drink. Move to make, thought to think. They can feel us from afar. Avenues and boulevards. White collar cannibal, what you gonna do? Everyone's attending, so who you gonna choose? I will not equivocate. If that's all, let's celebrate. Shamefully, shame's claim on me. Led my life with infamy, but I don't call it, I don't solve it, I dissolve it famously. I've been so politely at the bottom, pull it tight, bootstrap, strap it on and top 'em. I've been so politely at the bottom, pull it tight, bootstrap, strap it on and top 'em. Past, I was patient, now I'm so tired. Feverish you, I will not drop it. Power cowards never stop it. I have nurtured you, corrupted. I am erupting, don't interrupt it. Careful, I'm an animal, trap. First of the secondary class. You know I don't trust you, it's the catch. Don't you fucking touch me, I will nash. Cause I am an old phenomenon, and I am an old phenomenon. Show them we believe, see the unforeseen. Sharpen canine teeth, get those ringside seats. When the scorched of the earth come back by sea. Sip on joy, the purest drink. Move to make, thought to think. They can feel us from afar. Avenues and boulevards. I've been so politely at the bottom. Pull it tight, bootstrap, strap it on and top. I've been so politely at the bottom. Pull it tight, bootstrap, strap it on top. I've been so politely at the bottom. 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 I've been so politely at the bottom.
So clearly, Thao's Zoom meetings are better than our Zoom meetings, but thank you for letting us share that. And now we're really excited to bring in Thao Nguyen from the spectacular Thao and the Get Down, Stay Down, and Joe Goldberg from Brilliant Corners Management. Thank you both for joining us this afternoon. I think you're both muted.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. It's good to see you, Michael.
It's good to see you, Thao. And we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. First of all, congratulations on the album. And, full disclosure, we've been friends and colleagues in activism for a long time. And I just have such, personal fondness and investment in you as a human being and you as an artist, and just so appreciate the work. And I'm very fortunate to know, this album is a personal album. You're writing about themes having to do with your family and your identity and your life journey and things that I've been fortunate to kind of be tangentially not involved in, but, I know your mom, et cetera. And so it's especially meaningful for me, but it's just, it's a beautiful piece of work. And And thank you. And it also, obviously sucks that you released in the middle of a pandemic, so release day was last Friday, right? The 15th?
That's right. 1,000 years ago.
1,000, yes, years ago. And how are you? Well, let's just start there. How are you? Where are you? You're in Oakland?
I'm at home in Oakland. I'm doing well. I mean, as well as we could hope for. And happy to be here to discuss the greater inner workings at play and take a step back from our specific release. But
that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. So just a couple pieces of housekeeping. We're going to put the Bandcamp link up for the new album Temple, which again is amazing, and everybody should go buy it off of Bandcamp or your preferred. I should have checked with you guys. Are we good with Bandcamp? Is Bandcamp, are they okay?
Love Bandcamp.
Excellent.
God bless them.
Yeah, right. So buy it on Bandcamp and buy the vinyl, and then put it onto your Spotify playlist or whatever you do. And we're also going to post a link to an interview that Thao did with our friend Emily Fox from KEXP this past week on the Sound and Vision podcast. That is really a deep dive on the art and sort of going deep on a lot of the songs and sort of the underlying stuff, because it's a spectacular interview. And Emily is able to talk about that much better than I can. So, hopefully everybody watching today would like to go and learn more about Thao and her journey and this album, and that's a great place to go. But we're going to talk more about the mundane stuff, about the mechanics of the music community and the music industry, and, how this is sort of going. So before we get into that more boring stuff, the turnaround time on the Phenom video is kind of neat. And, we're all zoomed out. And we're all bored of Zoom. And I think you anticipated, kind of where we're going to go with this. But am I right that you turned that around pretty quickly in March, right? I mean, you sort of saw this come in and you're like, let's get this together.
I would say, the turnaround was exactly a week.
Yeah.
Because Joe suggested moving the original treatment of the video, which by then had been canceled, moving it to Zoom. And that was a Monday, and by Tuesday, the video was delivered. By the next Tuesday, the video was delivered. Yeah, and you're right. That urgency, there were a few things at play. One, it's such a novel format. Working within this medium is so of the moment that it could be easily to our detriment. Two, the fatigue. Three, that creative energy was different at that time because it was right at the beginning of what we were beginning to understand as something monumental, but we weren't sure yet. And so I think levels of despondency hadn't kicked in. It just felt like a kinetic energy we could capture, and we're still in a place to.
So Joe, bringing you in, albums have cycles. There's a whole integrated, you're getting the music out, you're promoting the music, you're building awareness, you've got the social campaign, you've got just the visibility, you've got the tour, all the integrated pieces. Could you speak a bit to kind of like how you thought the year was going to play out for Thao and for the band?
Yeah. I mean, Thao, when did you finally turn this record in? What was
December 30th or something.
Yeah, I mean, we'd been working with Ribbon, Tao's label, and talking about release date and timeline, and working with Tao's booking agent at Paradigm, Hallie Edrick, on the touring. And the plan was that the record would come out on May 15, and even at the beginning of this pandemic, I think we sort of we had a hope that our tour that was slated for mid-June, that we were lucky. We were lucky that we weren't out on the road when this thing hit. Right. A lot of artists got really, really crushed by that. And we thought we'd be okay. That we get a handle on it early, and testing would get figured out, and we'd know where we were at, and we'd be able to kind of proceed forward. And so yeah, I mean, that was the initial plan, and I think we announced the record in mid-February, and so we were about a month into the sort of setup when this all went down.
Mm-hmm. And so what can you share about trying to promote a record in this time? I mean, it's a lot of this, I assume it's a lot of conversations, a lot of interviews, a lot of podcasts.
It's a lot more, it's on my end at least, and I'll let Joe speak to, Joe and the team have had to had to pioneer different ways of releasing a record in a pandemic. But on my end, it seems like there's the same amount of press. There's less phoners and more, which I kind of miss, actually. I would rather do a phoner than a FaceTime, whatever. But I think the requests, there's more Zoom stuff. There's more, obviously, live streaming songs and so on.
And I think go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, it's so, it's sort of, there's a few things to it. I think a lot of, if an artist putting out a record right now, you don't know when you're going to tour, and in some ways, that can be very frustrating. I think, with the record announced and the first song out there and a plan in place, we sort of felt like, well, this is sort of an opportunity to just, be creative. We've got a great record. It's done. We're not trying to figure out how to go into the studio or how to, create. We had things finished. And so a lot of it was about, okay, we've got these finite limitations. What can we do creatively to highlight and spotlight the record? And, also there's so many outlets. Everyone's at home and they're looking for content and things to get behind. So, some people took the calculation, okay, I'll move my record back to next year. There's already so many records that are going to come next year. We had sort of momentum and marketing behind us already. So it's actually sort of, you're always trying to figure out, okay, well, how can we find our lane? Because there's so much music and so much stuff going on. Usually this one actually kind of felt like, we're going to have a lane. If we can be creative, there's not a lot of other people who are in motion right now. So I think that's something that we tried to take advantage of.
That's interesting. And we talk a lot, and Thao, you and I have worked a lot around sort of helping people understand, again, people outside the music community or don't live this stuff, understand the importance of non-commercial radio and all the infrastructure that they bring to the music community to kind of promote new music and create platforms for it. Certainly, you've had a great relationship with public radio for many years. Could you speak a little bit about that aspect, about how important they've been and just trying to build visibility for this project in particular?
Oh yeah, they've been so remarkable. And as a side note, I will say the opportunity to thank people, public radio, for their support of my career over the years has been a sweet part of being more available in some ways and being more in touch. I think one of the difficulties we've run into is how to show our gratitude for that support and be a part of the way things have had to move online to such a degree, how to maintain the intended musical integrity of the music we want to share in this new setting, for instance, a live stream. How to be a part of the programming that these public radio stations would like us to be involved in, and be so grateful for that, but also figure out how to best serve the music under these conditions.
Yeah, and something that I think has been a really challenging dynamic. So first of all, the reason we all do this work, and we all have done this work collectively for a long time in terms of the music activism work, is that the overall structures are deeply flawed and sort of vulnerable anyway, right? So we move into this era of shutdown from a starting point that is already deeply challenged and hard to kind of navigate how to kind of get through that. And then I think something that I think we're very mindful of, and we hear a lot in conversations, are that part of the reason that we do this work is because the role of art and the role of music and the role of musicians in the lives of so many people is completely out of balance in terms of the value proposition. And I know that, like, you are an artist, and I don't want to flatter you, meow, 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 but, you know, I mean, you're someone who people deeply connect with you. You know, your fans, you know, when you're playing a show, that room, you know, you're bringing something into that room that is extraordinarily meaningful for a lot of people, many of whom you, of course, will never meet and are just kind of projecting, you know, what their friend Thao is like. And I think that that's something that concerns all of us, because, you know, musicians already, virtually every musician is already extraordinarily economically vulnerable. I think part of the challenge in the music industry is that the economics are so uncertain that creates an ongoing level of stress and anxiety for, again, virtually every musician or person who works in the community, because you don't know what's coming down the pike and you can't really project for that. All you know is, I just got to work my ass off and try to make stuff happen. And when everything freezes, then for some musicians, then you're put in also in the position of, okay, now I have to be the voice who can then articulate the catharsis around what my people are feeling. And I know, like, Joe, some of the other artists that you're working with in your management company have been doing a lot of home concerts. I don't know if you could speak to some of that, but, you know, just the effort to kind of, you know, be present as human beings who also have a gift and are able to bring voice to complicated times is been kind of remarkable to watch in real time.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, that's been, I mean, just personally uplifting for me to see that and be a part of that. I mean, Ben Gibbard from Death Cab for Cutie, you know, I think it must have been, you know, a couple days after the sort of the shelter in place really took hold across the country. You know, we asked him if it was something he was interested in, and thought maybe he'll go on and do, you know, play a few songs. And he immediately came back and was like, oh, I'm going to do this every day for the next 2 weeks, and then proceeded to play like an hour concert every day, you know, which was really, really amazing. And I mean, as far as we hadn't, you know, our company, as artist management company, really try to kind of support our artists and whatever they're trying to do creatively, that makes sense from a strategic marketing, creative, all that stuff. So, you know, it was, he wanted to do it, and, you know, 2 days later wanted to be on air, and we were figuring out which streaming platform we were going to use, and settled on one where we could simultaneously broadcast from YouTube and Facebook. And, you know, we're sound checking over Zoom and on the cell phone, and producing, you know, whatever, live stream concerts. So, but, you know, yeah, it's been great. He's been able to raise a lot of money. Josh Ritter's another artist who's been doing that. You know, the artists who've got a ton of songs and can just do it with their acoustic guitar, makes that easy. It's more difficult for some of the artists where, you know, it's got to be full band, and you can't do that. You can't sync up over Zoom. It doesn't work.
Right. So let's turn a little bit to getting back out on the road. You know, as we said before, the point of our REVS initiative is not to set a date when we would like to see venues open or try to push that forward. What we're doing through REVS is basically saying at some point there will be the go ahead. At some point, public health will say, you know, it'll be different in every community, but now it's okay to do this. And so again, we want this to be as fast and as safe as possible. And we want to make sure that music workers and venue workers and audiences understand what's happening with this. So I know you can't really speak to calendars. I know you've had shows you've had to cancel. I know you were at one point scheduled to perform, I think, in 5 of our pilot cities, you know, so you were hitting a lot of the communities that we're working in with the REVS initiative. Could both of you speak to, you know, and you may not even have your head around this yet, but just when you're thinking about putting yourself into a venue, putting yourself on the road, bringing crew and band members with you, inviting audiences, fans in to see you, what are you thinking at this point? Like, what are you feeling, and Joe, and on the management side, the tension between, obviously it's your job to help your artists and, thrive, financially, and it's hard to do when you're not on the road, but obviously that there are trade-offs. So Thao, why don't you start? I mean, are you even thinking about this yet? Or are you just going to let it play for another month or two and then just kind of get your head around it, or what?
I've not thought a lot about it. Aside from my gut instinct is to say that I wouldn't feel comfortable touring until there was a viable vaccine readily available. I think moving through areas with such varying degrees of response and local government accountability, whatever. It's at such, it's so nascent at this point that I haven't considered it much. And it's only been the question of safety.
Right. Right. And Joe, what are you hearing, and especially from your artists, and starting just to get your head around this question?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think pretty much all of my artists sort of echo Thao's sentiment about sort of when they're going to feel comfortable going out and touring. It's a really a wait and see. There's, there's conversations happening. Our internal team, we've got a conference call every day where we're talking about what all of our artists are doing and what's going on out there. And then we've also we're doing, regular sort of connecting with other managers and just folks in the industry. It's, there's a lot of articles going on right now about concerts at drive-in movie theaters and venues at, large capacity, but only having, a couple hundred people in a 1,200 cap venue. I think it's, from a manager's perspective, it's really, it's wait and see, unless there's an idea that really just feels like it's going to make perfect sense. I can't, looking at some of the videos and the photos, I can't wrap my head around, putting an artist in a drive-in movie theater to play a concert. If it was something they were passionate about trying to make happen, I'd help them. But, it's a little depressing. So I have to say, even some of the photos of looking at these venues where it's, you got 200 people spread out in seats, and yellow caution tape in between them. I mean, it's just not what live music feels like for most of the bands I work with, where it's so much about community and being close together. Right.
Well, it's obviously it's a moving target, and we're going to be smarter in 2 weeks than we are right now. And I know we're all watching anxiously to see what happens in the South and of the United States and some of the communities that are starting to reopen, and how that's going to play. And, we'll be talking to Cody in a minute about Austin and what's happening in Texas, and they're in the middle of a lot of this stuff. So we certainly will be smarter. And I think, just to build on what you're saying, Thao, I mean, I think you've been pretty open also about the fact that touring's hard, right? I mean, it's not,
I've been excessively open about it, I think, because it has been, even in, obviously before all of this, as you said before, it is such a razor thin margin of everything. At every level of sustainability, it's dubious. And we were already considering how responsible is it to be touring in the way that we would have to be touring environmentally. And, there are other issues of the economics of it. When we are actually ready or able to tour again, I don't know what our band makeup will be, because I don't know what kind of work our band members, I don't know what kind of work we don't know who will be in a position to resume the touring life, or what kind of work or negotiations they would have had to make in the meantime.
Yep. So we have two questions I'm going to kind of synthesize, and then we'll let you guys go, and really appreciate your time. And these are really interesting questions, and I'm not sure that there's easy answers to either. But one is, so there's two significant areas of growth in the industry that have happened as a result of the shutdown. One is the sort of acceleration of virtual touring models. Again, Erin McCown was with us last week talking a lot of the work that she's been doing out of her home in Western Massachusetts. Is that something that is appealing, or is something that you're looking at doing more structurally, either in terms of a a virtual tour, or just putting more emphasis around your virtual events? And Joe, that's for you. And then Joe, if your other artists are kind of thinking about making more of a pivot towards integrating that even in a post-COVID world. Why don't we start with that one?
Should I go, or for Joe first? Yeah, I'll go. I've been reticent to acknowledge the necessity of the pivot. And I think, honestly, it would be a matter of what is necessary financially. And if that becomes which could be very soon, then I'll consider it more. I think it sort of hurts my heart to have to present live music in a virtual format. Yeah.
And Joe, is there anything you want to add on that, or I can pivot to the second question real quick?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that seems to be sort of the next step in this is venues are starting to talk about, when we can put, when you can have a crew go in and the musicians, going in and doing a full band live show with no audience and stream that over the internet. And I think that that's something that is I think that you're going to start to see that in the fall or over the summer, and already that venues are going to be available. And if the musicians are all in the same city or can easily get to each other, that is going to be sort of a stopgap measure that I think people are looking at.
And we have another question, which I almost feel like is almost quasi-rhetorical, and I'm not sure, Joe, if you're going to have a clear answer to this but it's building off the observation that certainly before the shutdown, overall global music industry projections in terms of the size of the industry have been showing tremendous growth because of consumer adaptation of paid streaming services. And of course, the economic shutdown is going to create some tension there, and we'll see what comes out the other end. But we have a question about just the challenges of, again, the overall economics of the industry just booming, but that a lot of that revenue not making its way down to whatever. I don't even know. Do we call people independent artists anymore? What's the language now? What do we call your client base? I'm old and call them independent artists, but who gets that money, and how does that happen? Is that something that again, I think that structurally is one of the challenges of the community that a lot of us are trying to engage with and have for a long time. And I don't know if there's an easy answer there, but I don't know if you would have any thoughts or reflections on that dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because, I mean, in one sense, streaming music in a time like this, it's so great that we can all just be in our homes and have access to all the music that exists, and we don't, have to put ourselves in danger or put other people in danger to go out and buy records. The other side of that is, independent record stores. That community is such a huge force in promoting new artists and new music and allowing new artists to grow and build, as imperfect as that is. So it's and then of course the economics of how the money flows in streaming. I mean, it's terrible, and it's it's really difficult because in one sense, it's like these industries, the streaming growth, like we still haven't reached like the maximum capacity. Something like this is really growing things, and you need to allow for industries to grow. So it can be understandable that the economics may not be great for artists as you're trying to help grow a new distribution system, but artists only have the cycle that they have. You know, it's you know, what does it do, Thao and the Get Down Stay Down, to put everything into growing an industry that 20 years from now is going to be mature. So it's yeah, I don't. It's
and it's a monstrously important question, and something I think we all are very mindful of. And again, it underscores why Music Policy Forum and a lot of us have done this work for a long time, because we've got to be thinking structurally, even certainly post-COVID as well. So you guys have been super generous with your time. Thank you, Thao, and thank you, Joe. Best of luck to both of you. Everybody go buy Thao's record. See her on tour when she is back on tour, and all that good stuff. So thank you, guys.